Hey guys, it's Joe, Justin, and Travis Hill from SVT Performance on today's Tuning Tuesday.
Episode
47 of Tuning Tuesday. We got some old relics here.
Antique.
Let us know if any of you guys recognize any of these.
Antiquities.
Antique tuning devices.
It's like looking at Game Boys on the desk.
If you can tell us when this was introduced and the part number, we'll send you a T-shirt. We'll send you a VMP T-shirt. Travis, would you be willing to pitch in a SVT T-shirt?
As soon as we get some new ones
As soon as
printed.
you get some new ones, okay.
I actually have a design that should be out maybe next week.
Okay, cool.
Damn.
So yeah, we're just going to talk about tuning stuff and hang out with Travis
Yep.
and antique tuning devices and stuff.
And antique tuning Bibles.
Yeah.
Yes.
So all this came about because I happened to be in Florida, so I was like, why not show up down here at VMP just unannounced and have
May
a
as
little bit of
well.
fun. But I put an article out this morning just talking about some of the, basically how modern tuning has opened up the aftermarket and just performance vehicles in general to a far wider array of people than was available in like the 60s, because you didn't have all the dynos and everything. If you didn't know how to change jets in a carburetor, you probably were not going to be doing a whole lot of performance work.
These days, everybody's a tuner. Every shop's got a dyno. And I remember when I first got into this in like 2000, 2001, I had to wait till Jerry Robleski came into town to have my twin turbo V6 tuned.
Man.
Yeah. And
The dark days.
my first tune, I mailed him the whole PCM.
What?
Yes.
Take it out of the kick panel.
Yes.
I wish I had a.
Pop quiz, do you remember processor code?
No, I do not remember the processor code of my first car.
Man.
That's fucked up, Joe. Yes! Yes, I remember it.
What is it?
It's BEH2.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. 2000 Mustang automatic.
So, when fuel injection first started on the Mustangs, there was almost no options. To like you were
People are scared shitless.
you were soldering something together and messing with dip switches to like tune for different injectors.
I had an air adjuster that plugged in line with my mass air sensor and modified the voltage.
Yeah.
And I remember posting on the forum, like, I'm going to try to lean it out like 5% and get a few more horsepower.
And were those older cars, I'm thinking back Fox body days now, you obviously didn't have a Fox body, but weren't those TP-based fueling, not load-based fueling?
Yeah, so it was watt.
Or load-based spark versus TP-based spark?
An EEC4 used watt spark, and there were very little load calculations. So you could actually trick the shit out of the mass air sensor.
And not screw too much
And it
stuff
really
up.
wasn't that bad. But then people started to try to do the same thing to the newer cars, and by like 96, you totally screwed things up. And like, so as far as like accounting for factory power adders, scaling tables above 1.0 load, you know what were the, internally within Ford, what had the most software and technology in them? Super Coupe, supercharged V6,
Yep.
and like the Turbo Coupe, because they had to account for a blower on top of an engine.
God.
And all the 5-liter stuff, was just naturally aspirated engine. It was pretty simple.
Interesting.
What about like the SVT Contour? Did you ever play with those? Any?
A little bit, but not much. There's a funny story behind that, just because of all the shit that I know.
Yeah.
That it's kind of well known within the circles that the tuning companies stumble upon all this information and they load it into their databases. I think the SVT Contour was one of the vehicles that had to be what we would call hand mapped. Literally read the hex code and find the tables. And there was no, pre-made guide that fell out of an OEM's computer system. Yeah, and there was a guy in Georgia. I think Doug did a lot of that stuff early on, and Jerry supported it.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting with the Contour. It was basically the Mondeo in Europe. So there was some European tuning still left in those things.
And
It was like a
SVT.
2.7 liter V6 or something silly like that.
2.5.
The Duratec.
It's 2.5 liter
Okay.
V6, which was great because Ford basically took that same architecture and made the 3 liter and put it in, escapes, Tauruses, all that kind of stuff. So that was a super cheap, bigger block you could put in to a contour.
I remember that too.
And if you put the
Yeah.
contour heads on the 3-liter block, you bumped the compression. And
Well-
it had better cams too.
I actually tuned a bunch of Cougars in Italy for a guy. I would remember. I could find his name somewhere, but had some Italian name, and he was always getting these tunes for Cougars, and they put the bigger block in them.
And it was such a cheap junkyard find too. I mean, you could buy a short block for like $300-400.
And like we used to really have to rely on trickle down technology in like the early 2000s, even the late 90s, because like a lot of times those European cars might have a better fuel pump that we could scavenge and put in our naturally aspirated cars when we supercharged them.
Oh, it's like
Grassroots level
yeah,
days.
trying to find an SVT Focus fuel pump, putting those in Terminators.
I
And
sold
then aviator pumps.
Yeah.
I sold a lot of SVT focused fuel pumps. You had to have the part number because it was available in America, but it was a European application or something.
Yeah.
And I remember from a tuning perspective, like when the 03 Cobra came out and then when the Ford GT came out, amongst tuners, it was like, oh, as soon as the computer code's available and it's in the SCT database, go and look at all the trick shit that they have in there. Like Ford GT, which is on this training manual. First Ford application to have like a 2.5 bar map sensor and a bunch of trick stuff in there.
Is that AME3? Something like that?
ARL5.
ARL5. ARL5's 1314 GT500.
Oh, no, yeah. No, not ARL5. It's AER3. You're right, AER3. Yeah.
I think I said AEM3, but yeah. Or AME3. Tough. Are the people wondering anything about our nostalgia throwback
Yeah, I
stuff
know.
that we're throwing down here?
So you have someone, Jeff Scarlin said an X2 1998. Root Beer Random says his guess is 2001. And really that's all I see so far.
Guys, you gotta.
Just Predator, I had that for my 04 Cobra back in 04, guessing 96, 97 when it came onto the market.
These, 96, 97, we didn't have jack squat. In fact, I was just starting high school, so.
Mark says favorite aftermarket ECU. Mine's a Pro EFI 128 currently. I'm just
Motec.
looking here, but it looks like really that's
If you have unlimited money, get a Motec.
We need
all of them to have.
some better questions on when these became available and what they are. Better answers, I mean.
So I can give a hint on the Predator because to me, as far as handheld tuning, it really all started with the Predator.
This was an industry leader.
Yeah, there was some stuff before it. I think SCT X1, was that before the Predator or about contemporaneously?
X1 was around 2004.
Okay. I think Predator was out first then.
And X1 had no screen.
Yeah, that's the thing. If anybody wants to look up, SCT XCal1, there was no screen. It had like 5 LEDs and like 2 buttons.
It's like a generic case of out of a catalog. It wasn't custom molded or anything.
Yeah, but the Predator was awesome because it had a screen and actual buttons.
And look, it's got JLP sticker on it.
Yep, Johnny Lightning Performance. That's my first handheld tuner I ever
And
had.
All
you
right,
get-
guys, just so you know, you're talking about tuning Cougars. So I'm getting comments over here sitting there saying that tuning Cougars sounds like fun. So
Oh, man.
Well, it's Florida. You could be tuning
Gotta make sure
saber-toothed
everything's
tigers.
optimal.
Yeah. I remember this thing was huge. Like, we kind of made fun of it because it was.
I remember that was the first tuner I bought for my 03 Cobra. I bought it used off of Craigslist.
Yeah. Look at this.
Justin Young says Motec for the win.
Justin's right. Get a Motec. Might have to get a loan, but get a Motec.
Eric Brooks says Predators was out first.
Yep. Eric would know.
Eric remembers those days.
Eric probably remembers the Tweezer days.
Man.
Now, if you had a Gen 1 Lightning, what were you going to do? And that was back in the day when you would try to go get mass airflow sensor. Like Ford Racing had a mass airflow kit for a lot of those speed density
Oh, yeah.
systems.
And then you have didn't AEM make a plug-and-play setup a little bit later on, probably early 2000s for some of the Fox
think
body
so.
stuff?
They made an E4 plug-and-play ECU, and I wonder if that's still even available from AEM.
I don't know. I know that I've seen a couple pop up on the Facebook marketplaces.
So I can tell you a really interesting tuning story that goes along with this thing.
No.
So bought my 04 Lightning, And I actually had a supercharger for it before I bought the Lightning. I bought the blower first because the Lightning, I ordered it. So I had to wait for my truck to come in for my supercharger I bought. So I could bolt my truck to my supercharger. So I got this thing from JLP because, you know, Johnny was huge in the Lightning game, and I had a Kenny Bell supercharger, and he was a Kenny Bell guy, so it made sense. So he sent me 3 can tunes for 3 different pulleys. And his shop was probably like 500 miles away from me. So I was it was mail order tuning, and this was the genesis of mail order tuning. It's when this stuff first came out, and everybody was afraid of it. Like, oh, you know, you need to get a dyno tune, especially for a blower car or a blower truck. So I take it to a local dyno shop, put it on the dyno, and they put the air fuel ratio, air fuel meter in it. Yeah, put the wideband in, check my air fuel ratios, and they show incredibly lean. Like, the truck should blow up on the dyno line. So I was like, this is my first one of learning all this stuff. Scared shitless. So I call up Johnny. He's like, I've done like 50 trucks with this setup. Like, the tune's fine. I was like, well, I'll be there tomorrow. So I loaded up that night, drove 500 miles to his shop. We put it on the dyno. It's perfectly fine. He actually tweaks it a little bit, gets me like 10 more horsepower. Come to find out, the shop I took it to, they had just run a late model dirt modified car
With leaded fuel.
with leaded fuel and ruined their O2 sensor.
And that's when you had the O2 sensor in an external box that had like a vacuum pump and a hose, right? And those things were notorious for not being reliable. That was one of the big differences in what I did early on, is I would always put a wideband in the exhaust. Sometimes at one point in the mid-2000s when I was tuning tons of non-wideband cars, I put 2, one in each bank, and you learned a lot of interesting things putting O2 in each bank. And nobody was really doing that back then.
No.
Interesting.
And it's crazy because we don't even, you couldn't even say wideband because we just worry about the factory cars since 2011 now have dual widebands, and you don't even have to put one in the tailpipe. And that's why we are where we are today with remote tuning and mail order tuning, is you can get so much data from the car that it's
I thought it was
tuner, and they
the data log back, and it's like within 1% of target air fuel.
Because since 2011, the cars, Coyotes, are closed loop on air fuel at watt. We command a certain air fuel, and unless those sensors are broken or not working right, then it's going to get to that air fuel. Of course, as long as there's a big enough injector and stuff like that. But
as long as the closed loop control can get it there. Like if you tell us you have a PMOS and you have a JLT 110, it's not going to be anywhere near target, and sometimes you can get on either side of that
correction. It might not make up, the correction might not make it up, but if we have the right setup, we can tune it very easily remotely. And even like Johnny said 15 plus years ago, I've done a bunch of these. I know what it looks like.
We are getting, so Matthew Emmerich says old tri-tweezer. I have a 532 to the wheel Fox body with the factory ECU. Also had an ADS piggyback in 88. CV tune by Blue Oval Chips, etc. I think I've had them all.
Nice.
You should start a museum.
Jim Ferraro says he just texted Justin a photo of what he used as of late 2002.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to pull out my phone and see what this text is.
While we're waiting on that.
Daryl P says, still using my Predator from Johnny Lightning on my 04 Excursion. Making 6 horsepower for years. Brandon Stevens says SCT Excalibur part number 9550 released in 2007.
No.
Andrew Vissen says guess is 2000. Brandon Stevens says Excalibur 2 again.
Excal 2, that's the right name. But I want the part number and
release date?
But not
Release year?
not Excalibur, Excalibrator.
Oh. Yeah.
No, he says Excalibur. But I'm trying to see if there's anything else.
Chris, I emailed you a picture from Jim.
So speaking of email tuning, so when all this stuff started with the Predator, kids these days have it so easy with cloud-based tuning and everything, and the device updates itself basically. No, you had to go to Radio Shack to get a serial cable for
Get a separate power
for your
supply
desktop,
for updating.
plus a separate power supply. And not only that, this brick of a power supply, you had to buy the little plugins individually to find the one
Oh my
that
god.
fit.
Eric Brooks says, do you need the part number for the preloaded or blank device?
I was waiting
Getting
for that. Yeah. Well, you know, Eric, I'm just going to go ahead and say that I'm a custom tuner, and I never bought the preloaded ones. So,
Oh man.
Yeah. So defunct tuning devices and defunct supporting devices from a defunct company. Radio
Well-
Shack not around anymore.
what would we do if we didn't have USB like tuning devices? Who has a serial port on their computer anymore?
Yeah.
Man.
A lot of people don't have a
And-
USB port on
Well,
like an MacBook
And that's
Air.
why we've merged into the cloud tuning stuff,
Yeah.
because people don't even have USB ports. They got Macs. They just have cell phones.
What's
I mean,
hilarious is a
Eric
lot of
says
these.
9400 then.
9400. All right,
Yeah.
Eric, you're getting a T-shirt.
What's hilarious is a lot of these
Eric
would come with
Brooks.
like an installation CD, and a lot of modern laptops don't have a CD port.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
And it's like-
what's in the bottom of this box? There could be something down there.
Oh,
paper,
look.
paper,
Like
a user
paper-
a paper user manual.
Yeah.
Joe, when are you going to get a new laptop?
I don't know. I've had mine for a couple years now.
Yeah, like since you started tuning,
Yeah.
which has
it's been
been
a
like
while.
4 years now. So,
I'm good at maintaining technology apparently.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because
It
my
works just
laptop
fine.
doesn't have a CD player.
No, mine doesn't
It's
either.
like thin. Oh, yours doesn't have one either? Okay.
No, mine's 2 USB 2.0s and then 1 USB 3.0. Fancy.
I must have an old brick one then. Mine actually has a Blu-ray player in it, but it's like a 17-inch laptop.
I have an old Sony Vaio that has Blu-ray player and HDMI out port and all that stuff.
We getting any questions, Carrie?
You do have questions.
Well, that's cool. Let's hammer down
Oh,
on them.
and then Joe just came in and said 9400 release 2006.
Oh, all right. I guess they're both getting T-shirts. Let us know what size and color you guys want.
Eric, I just sent you a message. Joe, send me a message with your contact info and shirt size, and we will get those out.
All right.
Actually, Eric says he'll pick it up at Mod Nationals.
Okay, cool, Eric.
Awesome.
So let's go here to questions. So Ian wants to know any updates on the 2018 Mustang GT with long tubes and the Gen 3.
We've got our 2018 Mustang GT with long tubes and a Roush supercharger. So I think we're going to have that up at Mod Nationals.
Yeah.
So we'll have it up there, and I think that's where all the details will come out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Look at these injector tables.
EM2K20 says Roush blower, 72 millimeter pulley, 14 GPH methanol nozzle, wound up pulling 25% in fuel timing. Is
Fuel timing?
low 20s, and everything else is stock. No fuel system mods besides meth injection. So meth pulley and a tune at 750 wheel horsepower. I'm not sure what the question is.
I
That's
think
a,
he's just making a statement, it sounds like.
And that's what it sounds like.
that's a lot of methanol if you're having to pull 25% fuel. That's kind of insane. I mean, if
I
you're
hope
making
air meter adaptation's off.
Yeah, really, because your spark table will be you'll be operating really low on the spark table, so you'll be running way more spark.
Our buddy Slab Shack says he was gapped by twin turbos on an 18 auto at the track. He needs to run all the boost.
Perfect.
Travis Schott says, what do you guys think of Steeda's new ProFlow closed air intake?
I have not seen
I don't
it.
see it.
I'll get a little technical with this stuff. In 11 to 14, the fresh air tube that the factory airbox drew through was kind of small, but in 15 up they made it bigger. So I imagine that the Steeda intake for 15 to 17 could do pretty well.
Yeah, and the thing I would like about a closed air box on a 15 to 17 is the GTs have the hood vent. They got to worry about water getting in from, so having
Yeah.
something that has a deflector just closes that box
Yeah.
off, makes it nice for people that live down in Florida.
I can
or the
remember
United States.
many times went through the car wash a couple times, or driving the car like real slow in the rain. The filter just gets soaked with water and kind
rem-
of coughs.
I remember we went to.
He said,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say we went to PRI one year, and BJ and I washed the car before bringing it up to bring it inside of the convention center, and we go to start it after, and it kind of coughs the first couple revolutions, and then light clicked off in my head. I'm like, we saturated the filter in water when we washed it.
I remember that. Yeah.
Travis Schott came back and said it's a 121 millimeter in their description.
Nice. If Steeda makes it, I'm sure it'll work well.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the size wars, everybody keeps making their mass air bigger.
It does basically nothing more than give you more range.
Yeah.
A mass airflow sensor is, think of it like a scale for measuring weight. If you're putting 50 pounds on a scale that goes to 3,000, are you really doing yourself a favor by adding more range to that scale when you're only weighing things that weigh 50 pounds? Size your air meter for your power goal and give yourself a little bit of wiggle room and call it done.
Eli has a 13 GT pulling a 800 to the wheel on meth and E85.
Mm-hmm.
He's got ID 1050s with a Siley dual pump return fuel system.
Mm-hmm.
The car is going lean above 7,000, and they can't figure out why. Pumps tested fine. Wires and connections look good. We ran it with and without meth, and it's spot on until high RPMs. He says, my tune was extensively data logged on a dyno and was spot on when finished. Nothing's changed since then, and all of a sudden it's going lean.
So is it going lean on the street or the track, or is it going lean in fixed position on a dyno? Because the thing I don't like about if I'm saying that I don't like it, the thing I don't like about the Siley systems is that for the guys making 800 to 900 wheel, they get you right up to that point, and then your fuel flow goes down significantly. And the Coyote does not have a fuel or pressure sensor to offset the injector calculations to actually make it fuel correctly when pressure drops. So you can test the pumps, and they both may work fine at idle part throttle cruise, and hell, even at watt up to the point of getting to $7,000. But if your pressure's dropping past 7,000 RPM because of either the restriction in the line that wasn't there previously when you dynoed it, or for whatever reason it's just consuming more fuel, that's why I'd rather have a set of 465s and like a four hat, or just a pump setup that can better support the higher horsepower cars around 800-900 horsepower with a blower. The turbo cars seem to be able to get a bit further on the fuel system, as traditional thinking would tell you, but the 1050s are also going to be pretty close to their limit at that power level. You should probably look at a set of 1300s. But if you're looking to try and diagnose the problem in the short term, I'd suggest putting a pressure transducer on the fuel line somewhere. CFM makes an adapter that plugs into the stock line that you can use to thread in a 8th inch MPT fuel pressure transducer and just data log fuel pressure at watt. If you see fuel pressure dropping below where you have base pressure set, you know that you're out of pump or you have a restriction.
He says it pulls hard, but fuel cuts up top. It ran a 10.3 through a T56 while lean.
Yep. Yeah, everything I said basically still applies there. It sounds like a fuel flow issue, whether that's maxing out the injector or maxing out the fuel pump. You're doing one of those two.
And when we tune this stuff on the dyno and we look at data logs, we can usually make a pretty good estimation based on various indicators from the data logs, and then a lot of times we'll verify with a physical fuel pressure sensor. So that's kind of the situation we're in when we're troubleshooting this stuff.
Travis Schott came back and says, thanks for the insight, Justin and Joe. For engine mods, he's planning on a ported 18 manifold, LU47 injectors, cold air intake, and maybe Texas speed long tube headers. With those mods in mind, what would you guys suggest for cold air intake?
Our ported 18 manifold packages, we're using the JLT a lot of times, the 120 millimeter JLT, since we were talking about sizes, but there's some, you can use your older cold air kit, but there's some little angle nuances and stuff like that.
On that same topic, do you know if PMOS ever revised the coupler or the tube for 18 manifolds on 1517?
They've got an angle coupler now that helps with that issue. Basically, the 18 manifold, the throttle body points up towards the hood, much like the GT350, whereas the other one just kind of came out a little more straight. So the cold air's gotta follow suit. And 15 to 17 is the biggest issue because the hood line comes down a lot lower. 11 to 14, you can probably get away with a whole lot more. There's just so much space under 11 to 14 hood.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Travis said, for now, I've got the stock cold air intake.
So while it's quiet, we should probably say who you are other than just Travis Hill of SCT Performance, because I feel like a lot of people that are on Facebook, or at least some of the younger kids on Facebook, they may know what SVT Performance is, but I don't see a lot of those guys on forums nearly as much as you do on Facebook pages. So kind of like introduce yourself.
Well, you basically introduced me. That's who I am. As far as the forum stuff, there's certain things that forums versus social media, that social media does better than a forum, and that a forum does better than social media. So a good example would be something that's heavily tech oriented. It's not, Facebook is not really set up for that kind of thing. So if you need to show off a bunch of pictures with descriptions or a very long list of, just like when you're diagnosing that fuel system issue, if you post that on Facebook, you've helped one guy. If you posted that on SVT Performance, it's infinitely searchable. Somebody can find it that had the same exact issue. So had the same fuel system, running the same power. Damn, I'm having this problem. Type it into Google. Right there it is. And you just help somebody. So what's the chances that if that guy messaged you on Facebook and you wrote all that out, that you do that again for the next guy, and then the next guy, and then the next guy?
Because it gets very repetitive and very annoying. And that's one of the things that I love about the forums compared with the Facebook pages, is that you can search. The search functionality is so much better on the forums. You can use Google, you can use Bing, everyone, to search each individual forum, whereas Facebook, if you're trying to search for a specific post, let's just say you're searching a 2018 manifold install, like 5 different things pop up where it's like one of it's just pictures of someone that installed it, and then it's 5 different guys asking of how to install it. Whereas if it's something that comes up often on the forum, most of the time it ends up getting sticky and it's a bit easier to find.
Or it's
I feel like there's more credibility with a forum than there is Facebook.
That, and then Google and your other search engines rank based on quality of post. Facebook doesn't really do that. And a lot of social media, it's geared towards just post more stuff, more.
Yeah.
Not so much quality of content. So I think it just depends on what you're looking for. So certain things like, hey, just look at my badass car. You know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you're going to get more attention from that, and it's a better platform to show something like that off. The 3-month build process of building that car, if you wanted to help the next person, that's better off in like a build thread on a forum that'll be there forever. Whereas, you know, a year from now, it's gone on Facebook or Instagram or whatever.
You have another question coming, Carrie?
We have a whole bunch here.
Okay.
When you have a chance. No, I wasn't trying to interrupt. I'm just sitting here listening. Peyton says, what makes the Ford Racing control pack different from factory ECU, such as no rear O2 sensor, no crankshaft relearn required, etc.?
So that's basically what makes it different.
They just delete it out.
Yeah, it's a non-emissions controlled device because it's made for off-road use only.
And they set it up a little bit differently than a factory ECU, like PAT's being turned off, so the anti-theft system's disabled. Some of those other, like if you're selling somebody a standalone ECU, you're obviously not going to sell them a gas tank with an emission system. You're not going to sell them a full exhaust system with an emission system. So it's just an ECU to run an engine. And where I was going is that I think they include like a power distribution box to run like your fan and your fuel pump. Because the ECU is good at controlling fan on-off temperatures and little stuff like that.
Exactly.
Suggestions on pulling rate for vital channels such as lambda, spark, throttle, knock sensor with HP Tuner's VCM scanner. Is there a practical limit for pulling rate over a certain number of channels?
I don't really play with pulling rate too much unless it's like a DMR that I need a lot of resolution on.
Yeah.
But in most cases, I just use the standard pulling rate that it pulls up with.
So I just want to speak in general terms about that. There's high-speed CAN and low-speed CAN type stuff. HP Tuners is a tool that works on Ford, Chevy, and Dodge, and actually a bunch of other stuff now. So a lot of times their scanner has some features that might, not apply necessarily to Ford, because from what I understand with Ford, it's all the data you request all the data, and it sends you all the data at the fastest rate that it can. I don't know that we have a whole lot of control on how fast that comes, other than if we select too many parameters.
Yeah, if you're selecting 40, 50 parameters, your polling rate's going to suffer.
Yeah, I mean, usually...
I think it goes down to the slowest poll. Like if you get circling back to SCT stuff, if you get like an OBD parameter, it makes all of those parameters pull at the rate of the OBD.
Yeah, and...
sorry.
Joe was talking about something. In SCT, we have the ability to see PIDs, DMRs, and OBD2. DMR stands for direct memory read. So rather than the computer pushing data across the bus, it's reading a memory location of the PCM, which is theoretically faster.
Khaled says, hello, I'm running a Gen 2 short block along with Gen 1 heads on my 14 GT. I'm planning on porting the head. Should I go with the Boss or Gen 2 heads and timing? Thanks.
So the Gen 2 heads were made to, as cast, simulate what the Boss head flowed. I'd say if you're going to be porting heads, I'd start with Gen 2 heads and have those ported instead of starting with Boss heads.
So we have a little bit of experience with that because we went down that road recently, and we work very closely with a company that does a lot of porting. The Gen 2 heads, from what we know, have the ability to flow a little bit more on the exhaust side. There's more material there to remove when porting, but depending on your budget and what parts you've got now and stuff like that, Gen 1 heads, once somebody that knows what they're doing porting wise gets a hold of a set of heads, they're going to make them better than anything factory you could buy. So splitting hairs on what you start out with factory wise is kind of...
Put them in the hands of a good porter.
And you really wouldn't be talking about a huge difference between them. Say you started out with both, had them both ported. You're not talking about a ton of horsepower difference, no matter which one you start.
Especially if they're running the same CNC program.
Yeah, I mean, you're potentially talking about a few CFM on the exhaust port, because the 2015 head can have more material removed from the exhaust port. That's about it.
John Hall says, hello, quick question. Is there any such thing as underspinning the blower? Still considering the Gen 3, but I saw something about underspinning. Can you guys shed any light on this?
Underspinning. So
New buzzword, underspin.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to spin your blower too slow.
You just won't make as much power. Like, we make...
I can tell you that we don't make a pulley size that you can really underspin one of our blowers on.
Yeah, I mean, let's say a couple scenarios. Coyote with a 92 millimeter on a Gen 3 is still going to make, what, 10, 11 pounds at least with our biggest pulley. And then GT500 Gen 3 with a 3.3 upper is going to make probably
16, 17 pounds.
Yeah, it might even make as little as, you know what, I have that data from the car. It might make like 12 or 13.
Okay.
So a stock blower with a smaller pulley, with a 2.5 pulley, Gen 3 with a 3.3 would still make the same boost. But, okay, it's a practical application of underspinning. You want to, if you're at altitude or you're trying to accomplish certain goals and stuff like that, we want to put the pulley on it to get you the best average horsepower for the octane that you've got available to you. I think that's how we'd kind of explain it.
Yeah, I'd say it's the best way to explain it. I don't really see a whole lot of utility to spinning the blower slower to make it safer for your engine, as long as
we can control.
If you have high octane available, don't waste it.
Yeah, if you got good 93 or even the 85. And we can control how aggressive things are tuning-wise with timing very, very easily. I mean, you don't want to end up in a lopsided situation where you're running like 20 pounds of boost and like 10 degrees of timing, but you know, if you can run like, just speaking in round numbers, 15 pounds of boost and 15 degrees of timing, or 12 pounds of boost and 20 degrees of timing, then you're going to be pretty well matched.
Well, to me, when I think underspinning a blower, it's not specifically looking at one blower setup versus that setup with a different pulley. It would be comparing blower to blower. So let's say you're comparing a 2.3 liter blower to like a 4.5 liter, something like that. If you're underspinning that big blower because your car can't handle whatever power it would make when and you're spinning it in its efficiency zone, then all that added mass is just, you're just turning that and losing power because you're not getting it in the efficiency zone where that blower really wants to run.
And you know what? Now that you start to speak across many blower manufacturers, many displacements, I can we've been in some of those situations where like maybe a 2.8 liter on a 4.6 liter motor, they run a really big pulley, but they lose out on a lot of mid-range.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why like the 1.9 liter TVS was a really nice blower for like a 4.63 valve, because you're going to split the motor before you really are going to run out of efficiency on that blower.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to put big rods and pistons and cams and go crazy, yeah, get the bigger blower. But, you know, a lot of guys, it's like turbos. They fall into the trap like, I want twin 76s, but I'm only going to make 650 or 800 horsepower, whatever. You don't need
5,000 RPM.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a good story about that. I used to do a lot of articles and everything in this shop called Arrington Performance, and it was a Dodge shop, but I liked going there because it used to be a NASCAR shop. So they had this really badass dyno cell, and it was set up with like a 200-mile-an-hour fan. Like, it was set up to run NASCARs on a chassis dyno and simulate on-track conditions. So if I wanted it to be 58 degrees with 18% humidity in there, you could just punch it up, you know, wait 30 minutes. That's what it is in the dyno cell. This place was badass. But they had this one customer. It was a Challenger. I think it had the 6.4 Hemi in it. But they had this thing, and he had twin turbos, and he had nitrous. But he wanted a supercharger with twin turbos and nitrous, just because he wanted to show off.
The big three.
Yeah. So they bolt on a 2.3 liter Magnuson supercharger, TVS, great blower. It cut like 400 horsepower off the car because the blower was a restriction for the turbos. Yeah, it's crazy. But, you know, sometimes the heart wants what the heart wants.
Oh, man.
John Baggett says, should have never sold Betty Joe Sinner.
Oh, man. Oh, John. John probably saw my Snapchat video earlier. I was driving Sean's car. John had you probably remember 2 years ago at NMRA, the Cobra that I was messing with on the dyno, like all day.
Okay.
That's John Baggett.
Oh, GT500 or Cobra?
Cobra.
Cobra, okay.
Yeah, it was the Red Fire vert I had on the dyno out at
okay.
Bradenton. I think you were out with
Orion.
Orion. Yep, yep.
Okay.
Tim Obas says, what was the most memorable fun car you guys have worked on and driven?
Ooh. I'll let you guys start.
I am going to say my 07 GT500. I did a lot of stuff with that car. Drag racing, open track, even autocrossed it once, tested a lot of parts, developed a lot of stuff on it.
How about you, Travis?
Worked on, well, I guess it would be the same thing. Got to work on and drive a couple IMSA cars. And anytime you can play with an actual race car, that's really cool, because you see all these parts that are familiar, but it's just to the nth degree. So it's like a $50,000 set of shocks on this thing.
Like Olin's.
Yeah, it's just crazy. So that would have to be it for me.
Data acquisition out the wazoo, custom exhaust and headers that weigh like 5 pounds.
Inconel stuff.
Yeah, which we were actually looking at ProFab last week, and we're going back there this week.
Awesome. Me, it's just like Cobras, GT500s. I mean, the fastest car I've been in is probably one of Grant's cars.
Like, Joe has like built so many cars, like pretty cool cars he's like built himself. You're underselling yourself, Joe.
Boring. Well, compared to race car stuff.
Well, to me, there's a certain romanticism with the older cars, but I would say, to me, it's more fun to drive, say, you could even say like a 400 or 500 horsepower Fox body versus, say, a 650 horsepower like 07 to 9 GT500, because that Fox body with like 450 horsepower feels like it's going to kill you. Yeah. The car's rattly, it feels like it's going to fall apart, and it just feels fast, even though it may not be fast.
That is how I measure cars. Like, I feel like I'm out of control.
Yeah.
Yep.
To me, that's more fun. It's more fun to try to go fast in a slow car.
And I
It
get
sounds
where
like an
you're-
800 wheel Cobra with a solid axle.
And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm getting where you're going with this. I'm going to bring up another parallel. The 2005, 2006 Ford GT. Like, we look at how expensive that car was and the technology it had in it. Like, it didn't have stability control. It had ABS.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if it had traction control.
We could look.
It didn't even have cruise control. So like you're driving a driver's car, as they would say, and I mean you want to have ABS because ABS can do things better than you can.
But think about like an early Viper, no ABS.
yeah, those were
no
known
traction
for
control.
being like the ultimate
Yeah, it's a
driver's
dentist
car.
killer.
I love it.
Mike Whedon chimed in and said Grant's car. Joe knows.
Grant, I think Grant needs to bring his car over and we can all drive it.
I wouldn't go that far. I think he's talking about the yellow car.
Oh, okay.
I think the yellow car would scare you.
It would scare the shit out of me. 173, and I watched it go 173 in the quarter one night.
Yeah. Yeah, and it did 220 and a half before
Yeah.
he did a bunch of other stuff to it. That car's nuts.
We have about
12 minutes.
yeah.
How many
and-
questions we got?
Yeah.
We got a lot.
You got a few. Abdul Latif. Apparently, I think you must tune his car,
Okay.
maybe? Because he says, hey, Justin, my car just spiked -5 degree sparks mid-watt.
Okay.
Sounds like a torque reduction.
That or happy. If it's -5 on knock.
Oh, knock sensor.
If you
Yeah,
talk about knock sensor, -5 on knock, it's
that's
happy.
good. It's adding on a lot of power. We'll have to talk and see exactly what that means.
Yeah. We need some more clarity on that.
Ricardo says, I just changed my upstream sensors. I have long tubes with a customized tune on my 13 GT because they were bad. A couple days later, the car started to throw a different code, P2240. What should I do now?
Do you know what 2240 is offhand?
I don't. Somebody Google that, please. We'll come back to that question.
Poor boy says, happy Tuesday, VMP. Put my car up for the winter. When I pulled it back out, should I change my plugs? 27,000 miles, cold or hot plug. 93 tune on a 13 GT 6-speed.
So you're not bad on mileage, and your power level doesn't necessarily dictate that you need to change a plug. And the winter storage doesn't really do anything to hurt plugs. So I'd put a few more thousand miles on it. If you want to prep for, a power adder or something in the future, you could go a step colder. But it's nothing that needs to worry about right now, really.
Daryl says, I had a call. Did I miss anything? I don't know, Daryl, because we don't know when you had your call.
One suggestion I would have on the winter storage thing, and this kind of depends on how long you're putting your car away, but if you're just putting regular street gas in it, ethanol blends, and I've noticed a lot of stations now are carrying like E20 ethanol blends, and then a lot of guys running E85. Before you really get on the power the next season, run that old fuel out because it loses octane, or especially with the ethanol fuels, they'll absorb water from the atmosphere. Just run that crap out before you really get on it.
We see that winter gas, that gas that's been stale, even winter blend gas does not tolerate timing whatsoever. So yeah, to get full performance benefit, you want to have fresh gas.
Especially if you're putting stable in it.
Yeah, stable kills it.
Fuel stabilizers do not do it. Don't do it.
And that's like talking with the Boosting guys. They improve the octane level and they stabilize the fuel in a product that's not very expensive.
Exactly.
And it adds a lot of performance.
Exactly.
Mike Whedon came back and said P2240 is an O2 sensor, positive current control circuit, open bank 2 sensor 1.
It's too long.
I heard open circuit, so it makes you think there's a connection issue.
Yeah.
That or the fuse.
Anytime you've got circuit issues on a code that says circuit issue, you've got a wiring, or like Joe said, O2 sensors often have a separate fuse in the box that powers that.
I think it's fuse 64 on 11 to 14s. It powers TI-VCT and the heated O2s.
Oh, it's the same
and the wide
circuit?
bands. Same circuit.
Wow.
So a lot of the times when the fuse goes bad, or you have a wiring issue on that circuit and it causes the fuse to go bad, you'll lose VCT and you lose wide bands.
You know who drove around with a bad O2 sensor fuse for like 6 months? Steven, on his O3 Cobra. And that reminds me, I had a customer that had O2s that were not warming up very well. Suki, should find that fuse and check it.
I think it's on the older Cobras. It's like fuse 10 under dash is one of the engine control fuses, and then there's a separate circuit for heated O2 underneath the hood.
Okay.
So that sort of brings up an interesting juxtaposition between the older cars and the newer cars. The 2017 cars are going to be able to tell you through a trouble code or through a sensor what's going on. Terminator, maybe not so much. So how much do you guys run into issues where the car just doesn't have the technology to tell you what's wrong with it versus the new stuff?
It's a balance of both, kind of.
Yeah, because the older stuff, you'd get into the woods of a lot of people were shutting off lights that they didn't need to shut off that would indicate that you have a bad fuse or a bad sensor and stuff like that. Whereas now, a lot of that stuff's left enabled because it just works so well that when you do have a problem, it generally means you legitimately have a problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, and sometimes we run into situations, though, where we still have to detect the problem based on the data and look a little farther. I mean, my GT500 had a bad O2, and we never threw a check engine light.
Yep. That was extension harness is another subject of long conversation. Where you can avoid it, don't use an extension harness.
Well, just wiring in general can be one of the worst things ever to try to track down an issue with. We were working on a Raptor one time. We just went off-roading with it, and it felt like the fuel pump kicked out, and we had pinched a wire on the thing. And I mean, let's get down with a voltmeter and start testing continuity on the wiring harness.
Looking for amp draw and other weird
crazy
stuff. Yeah. Carrie, you got more questions?
Denzel says, do you guys think the EPA will kill off ECU recalibration? Seems like the idea of, quote, off-road use only, unquote, no longer applies.
That's a good topic that we'll touch on real quick. Off-road use only is not currently protected by law, so
It's
that's
not
why
recognized by the EPA as
SEMA has a huge initiative to get the RPM Act passed, which would at least create a clear definition of off-road use, so that safe harbor will exist indefinitely as long as the law is enacted. So I think that RPM Act is really important, but a lot of companies are working really hard and have made a lot of headway to get the government to understand that we're still going to do this. And as many negative things that come out of the SCT settlement, there's quite a bit of a silver lining in that too.
Yeah, I mean, it sets a precedence for us being able to legally modify cars and do what we want to do to them as long as we're playing within the bounds of we're not actively trying to defeat emissions devices and we have a reasonable basis or reasonable suspicion that what we're doing isn't negatively affecting the car's emissions.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that you can do and there's science behind it that that is valid.
Yeah, it's a super complex issue, and there's definitely not enough time here to discuss it, but there's a whole lot of difference that a lot of people don't understand about actual statutory law, like the Clean Air Act, and then the EPA takes that statute, which might be that thick, and then it comes up with regulations that thick based upon it. And that's what the RPM Act would be great about if SEMA can get that pushed through. That would legislatively define what off-road use is, so we would all know, and you wouldn't be relying on bureaucrats to do bureaucratic rulemaking.
Yeah.
And it's much more well, once it's actually statute, then the bureaucrats can't play around with it.
Right.
But if you leave them open room, that's where they're going to regulate. So
Sort of interpret as they think they see fit.
and it's going to be at the whim of whatever administration might be in. So all of this with SCT, that all started under the Obama administration, and with a much more proactive EPA versus with Scott Pruitt at the helm and the Trump administration. So get your legislators to support the RPM Act and take care of it once and for all.
Yep.
Shout out, Tim Nelson says, Joe, thank you for the help with my wideband hookup and data log last week.
No problem.
Mike Whedon gave some acknowledgement. He has done a great job, great service, VMP for life.
Nice, awesome.
Yogan says, do you guys suggest any coilovers that you can daily drive on, take to the strip, and take to the road course?
The only ones I'd fully endorse would probably be a Roush coilover setup.
We got those on our car. They're pretty, compliant but good handling. And
not too rigid.
Really, you can make up a lot. If you want to do a tire switch at the drag strip, you can make up for a lot of suspension with a decent tire. Up until, like a 1.5 60 foot. Once you start to go faster than 1.5s, now you need to start thinking about a lot of other things.
I find a lot of people don't spend enough money on their tires. To me, that's probably one of the best performance bucks, performance for the dollar you can do is buy tires for
Performance
your car.
for dollar, it's huge.
Yeah, because no matter what you do to the engine and everything, it gets to the ground through a tire. The brakes don't work if you do not have good tires. That's
The car doesn't handle without good tires.
So it's one of the things that I've been doing for years is once my tires get like 25, 30% worn, I buy new ones. I put the old ones on Craigslist. They always sell real quick for about 50% of the price of the new tires.
Yeah. Save
And
yourself
even
some money.
like fresh tires, like tires that are a year or two old, they get hard
Oh, yeah.
and stuff. Like you actually can use up a lot of the good stuff in the tire. You can out heat cycle a tire before you wear out the tread.
Oh, yeah.
Travis says, with the Roush coilovers, are you talking about the 3-way adjustable or the single adjustable?
We have 3 ways on Track Attack, and I believe we sell them on the website too. If not, we can get them for you.
Abdullah Teef says, can I use 47, I'm guessing he's saying pound injectors for 79mm VMP Gen2 on 91 octane?
That is... Can you get away with it? Yes, but only if we limit the amount of RPM you can turn.
We'd rather see 56s in it.
That's funny to see that, but at a very basic level, you do have to tell people how to do that if they've never done it before, so it makes sense it's in the Bible. We're laughing about how it's explaining how to do an axle ratio change here in the Bible.
Yeah, this ancient document.
Dale says that he ordered
Pro
the
Racer
2.9
edition.
pulley for his 18 Roush Supercharged GT. Do we have any updates on when they'll be in the 2.9s? And
Those should be real close. I'll check on them.
okay. Ian says, would you mind elaborating on the SCT tuning classes, as in information on what to expect with online versus in person and each class?
We haven't been involved in those SCT tuning classes, honestly, so I don't know what they're teaching in those these days.
Look, you actually had access to nothing.
I'd be curious just to go to one, just to see what's talked about in there, and what they're telling people. Not that I think they're telling people anything wrong, but just be curious on the outside looking in to see what all goes on in there.
Daryl wants to know, how does fuel flow change or affect pulse width, and does either affect the other?
Well,
They definitely affect each other as long as you're able to maintain fuel flow. But essentially, when we're talking fuel flow and whether or not a car is going lean based on fuel flow, it basically means that your fuel pumps aren't able to output enough fuel or volume to sustain pressure inside the rail. So the thing that you really need to look at there when thinking about how it interacts with how the car goes lean or not is not so much flow as it is the ability to maintain pressure because of flow. When your pressure goes down, you have to increase injector duty cycle to maintain the same fuel mass. If you're not increasing injector duty cycle based on pressure, then you're going to run into an issue where the car starts running lean or the engine starts running lean, kind of like what that guy earlier was expressing. If you have a whole lot of fuel flow but not enough injector, then you're basically using a hose nozzle and you've maxed out the hose nozzle and you're not getting any increased volume from it, regardless of what you set the pressure to behind it. Although that kind of doesn't work that way with injectors. You flow more the more pressure you put through them. But specifically in reference to that guy earlier, it's fuel flow becomes an issue when volume becomes an issue, when pressure drop becomes an issue, which then causes injectors to max out or injectors to not compensate. It all happens together.
Yeah, you hit the wall all at once. How many questions do we have left, Carrie?
About a handful.
Okay.
Mustang GT said, what's the difference between the VMP Gen1 and Gen3 supercharger? Can I get to 1,000 horsepower with a Gen1 and a smaller pulley?
Heck no. A lot of evolution between those two, and not only do we have evolutions in the case design, 2-piece versus 1-piece, but also a new rotor set. Like, it's literally 10 years of technology between
all
the
the
two.
transmissions are.
You want the Gen 3.
Daryl came back and said, good info, thank you. Chad Dowd says, I'm just ready to go to the VMP tuning classes. Can't wait to learn it up.
Hey, Chad.
Jeff Scarling says forums are awesome for technical information in his opinion. He still goes to SVT nearly every day.
Let's bump it up to every day.
Uh,
And if you really want to be good, 2 days.
Two a
Twice
day?
a day. Yeah, you gotta get around
Just
2 a
check in, see
days.
what
It's
it's
like
doing.
football practice, 2 a days.
So Turbinator Lou says, hey Joe, thanks for my tune. Car runs pretty friggin' mint.
Nice.
By the way, my apologies on patience. All I had was beating the crap out of someone that owes him some money. He said, you demand, brother, thanks again.
No problem, man. Reminds me of the Family Guy episode where Stewie is owed money by Brian.
Oh, yeah.
Where's my money? Where's my money?
Tim Obis says, I wish the show was longer today.
oh, sorry, Tim.
Alan
to break your
says, Alan Taylor comes back and says, love how open and informational you guys are. So
Thanks.
he's
We
very
try.
happy. Billy Brantley wants to know what happened to the coyote swapped fox.
Which coyote swap fox?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
There's
He
like
doesn't say.
50 of them. Oh, there's more than that.
We already got that one on the other channel. Wanted to know more about the SCT tuning classes. Slab Shack says best launch control RPM on a 14 GT500, 700 horsepower on ET streets.
I'm going to say around 3,500 to 4. Just that motor makes a lot of torque. You don't have to zing it like a GT or a GT350.
Yeah, I'd say whatever your tire and your clutch release.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Be ready to upgrade the clutch.
There's a part out there, I think Real Street did a video on it probably almost a year ago now, that controls the rate at which the clutch is released on the line. So you can make it consistent.
Just put a solenoid on the clutch. Yeah,
And then it's programmable so you can change the rate at which it
that's perfect.
releases.
It's going to be really interesting with the new GT500 and see how that programming works out. I don't know
Yeah,
if you've
we'll
guys
see, 'cause,
gotten into that yet.
No one seems to, or Ford hasn't seemed to have done a fantastic job with the programming of what you're referring to stock. There's been a lot of issues with the stuff they're currently using it in. I don't know if they ever ended up getting it figured out in like 16, 17 model years, but previous it was pretty bad.
Oh, the transmission I'm talking about
Yeah,
has not been.
it's bad.
What?
Hopefully they got it figured out.
Abdul Rahman, I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Probably not.
Abdul Rahman.
It's okay.
Throttle body 163 in VMP Gen3 in a GT500, 14 GT500. Is it going to decrease the drivability?
It depends on the setup and the application. We really recommend that throttle body for more of a very heavily modified application. So check in with us, let us know what you're doing, and we can tell you if it's suitable or make a recommendation as to what's suitable.
Good
Travis.
rule of thumb is cams.
Oh, sorry.
If you have aftermarket cams, everything's going to be smooth because aftermarket cams aren't that smooth to begin with. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Travis Schott says, what traditional suspension setup would you guys say would be good for dailying as well as drag racing, autocross, and road course? Do it all.
For the money, the Ford Racing Kit is pretty good.
Yeah, I'd say the Ford Racing Kit would be a good
FR3,
buy,
yeah.
but I mean, people, they want a Swiss Army knife to do everything, and it's like, if you want anything to do anything exceedingly well, you need to cater it to that specific thing.
Very, very different technology to get into.
No.
CMO117 just makes a comment. He says, we still have issues with newer vehicles not explaining what's wrong when a code is provided. P207F is a good example. With the 6.7, you will hunt an efficiency issue with the exhaust system filtering. Could be a NOx sensor going bad, an EGT going bad, DEF fluid isn't good, wiring issues, etc. Just hasn't met all the qualifying factors for the PCM to register what's wrong completely.
And that's what we see. There's permutations of errors that cannot be figured out by a computer algorithm.
Like there's a code for 1314 GT500s that's like cold start spark advance related or something like that they throw completely stock, and like people take their cars to Ford can't figure out what's done to it or what's causing it, so they change something as trivial as like the fuel pump to correct the issue, and it's like, what?
And you only tripped that code because you were barely on the edge of the threshold anyways.
Yeah.
And with that,
That's when good old-fashioned mechanical knowledge comes in handy.
Well, Thanks for watching, everyone. Like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And we'll be on next week.
Go check out the forums.
Yeah,
Yes, check out svtperformance.com.
Yeah.
Look at all them stickies.
Yeah. Especially the Terminator one. Like any new Terminator and GT500 owners. If you're just getting the car, man, that's invaluable knowledge.
I send people links to SCT Performance all the time, or Cobra guys that are doing installs that have questions about how to do this or how to do that. It's like,
nice.
Man, it's all there. Here's, let me Google that for you.
Yeah, like the one Cobra Bob thread that has like all these links in it. Just read that thing. It's basically the Bible.
For Cobras.
So, I've got one quick question. Are you going to make the VMP blower for the 7.3 Godzilla that's coming?
Are we still rolling? Just so you know, we're still live.
Yeah,
That's okay.
that's fine.
We'll
I've got him on camera. I want an answer. Oh, we'll see. Yeah,
We'll see.
We'll see.
That big block coming?
It's sort of like a medium block.
Yeah. Have you seen it yet? Is it a real thing?
Oh, it's definitely real. I haven't had it in front of me, but I have pictures of the heads and everything.
I saw all that stuff you guys posted probably, what, 6-7 months ago now?
We've done like 3 of them.
Okay.
So
I may be thinking of the first one then.
yeah, the first one I was speculating on it being just a coyoteized version of the V10 because to me that made sense because if you basically took the stroke of the V10 that is now 6.8 liter and you did the bore of a coyote, it comes out to 7.3 liters as a V10. And to me that made sense. Like, they've got all this stuff figured out, they should just do that.
Had 2 cylinders.
But then I started talking to some other people, and they're like, no, it's a pushrod V8. What? It's the exact opposite of everything you thought it would be. But yeah.
So taking a step forward to take a step
simpler is better.
relatively back.
It's real. I would expect to see it probably Detroit Auto Show. Probably 2020 Super Duty. Don't get too excited. It's not going to be put in a car anytime soon. Even though there were some people at Ford Racing very excited about it.
We can change that.
Yeah.
We can change
Shoehorn,
that.
big old
Well,
pushrod motor.
I think if they offered that thing with the control pack, every Fox body guy ever, like I can get a 445 cubic inch, modern fuel injected engine with these massive aluminum heads. Yeah.
Add a TVS or add 2 TVSs and turbo.
Pump that air through.
You put you a TVS, twin turbos, and nitrous.
Direct
And
port.
with that,
Man,
we're
that
out
is
this
it.
time.